Hey everyone, welcome to the live stream of the podcast. Hey Stephen, and welcome to all of you that are watching this after the stream is over. Hope you'll enjoy this. I'm about to record an episode of my podcast, The Break, which you can find over at tridio.com. Just search for The Break, and also in the iTunes store, of course, or in the iTunes, what is it, the podcast store? They should call it differently. And of course, on YouTube, you'll also find a number of these video episodes. The only difference with the podcast is that you won't be able to hear the jingles because I have a temporary studio set up, so I can't really let you listen to that. But in terms of the contents, and you're listening to me over the microphone of the webcam, and welcome from all these different parts of the world. Welcome from Poland, dobry wieczór, and welcome from the United States. Welcome from other parts of the world. I won't be able to talk much to the chat room while I'm recording this show because I have to focus on one thing at a time, which is hard enough. So, but I still hope that you guys have a good time in the chat. All right, let me get my notes in order, and then we can hopefully have a flawless show. Always many people from Poland because, of course, I've got a lot of Polish followers on YouTube, and so this shows up in their feed, which is great. It's a beautiful country of Poland with one of the most beautiful languages in the world. I wish I spoke it better than I do. But the language in the chat is going to be English, if you don't mind, because we have people from all over the world. So let me get my notes. I already have them right here. So this is going to be episode 1018. And over the course of the show, there will be more people popping in. I posted about it on Twitter and Facebook. So it usually takes a while before people realize that I'm live. And so, again, if you could stick to English in the chat room, that would be great, because otherwise it's a bit hard to moderate because not everyone speaks Polish. Let's go. Press record. This is The Break with Father Roderick, episode number 1018. And I'm your host, Father Roderick. From the Simpsons to the Sacraments, from technology to theology, this show features the cool and the classical, the past and the future, the trends and the tradition. So wherever you are and whatever you're doing, it is time for a break. Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of The Break, recorded in the first full week of Lent. And I just came back from the movie Logan, which is, of course, the latest in the X-Men series. And I discovered that Lent, fasting, and going to a movie like Logan is not a good idea, because you kind of need to have a strong stomach for that movie. We'll talk about it a little bit more later on in this episode, when we will talk movies and TV shows. Welcome also to the people that are watching this in the live stream on YouTube. I try to live stream as much as I can when I'm recording a podcast, but I know that the majority of my listeners are not there live. They listen to this after the fact, which is, of course, a perfect way to enjoy the podcast as well. Well, let's begin with the news. It happened years ago, many, many years ago. I had just been ordained a priest together with a number of other friends. And after having worked for a while in the parish, we decided that it would be nice to have a reunion and to get back a year after the ordination and just travel and have a day together. because we'd been together in seminary, of course, for many years, and so we knew each other very well. The whole lead up to the ordination had been very intense, and then all of a sudden, everyone gets nominated in various parts of the country, and you kind of lose track of how everyone's doing. And so we thought that for our first anniversary of our ordination, it would be a good idea to go back to the country where we did our retreat. Before you get ordained, you always do like a retreat, and we went to a monastery in Belgium for that. And so we always have a special, I don't know, special emotional connection, I guess, with the country of Belgium. And so we decided that we wanted to go to the city of Ghent in Belgium, which is a beautiful ancient city. Belgium has a lot of beautiful cities, but none of us had been to Ghent before. I think just me and perhaps one of the group had been to Ghent before. And so we decided that we wanted to go visit. I think we even went to see the Sisters of Mother Teresa there. And then we ended the day, which was really wonderful, with a good Belgian meal. And they do some serious cooking in Belgium. And so I ordered myself a big steak, fries, some legumes. It was some beer. It was just perfect. And we could have a late dinner because we'd booked a hotel so that we didn't have to rush and we could go back home the following day. And so we had this wonderful evening. And I remember that we walked back to the hotel when all of a sudden I start to feel this pain in my left side. And it's almost as, it felt as if I had eaten something wrong and something was wrong with my stomach. And so I told the guys, they're like, just hold on, I need to sit. And I sat on a bench, and I was like, I don't think that the steak did me any good, or I don't know what it was, but I don't feel that well. But just hold on, I'll be good. This will pass. And so I sit there, and instead of the pain fading away, it got worse. And so I'm like, gosh, guys, we need to go back to the hotel. I probably need to, go to the bathroom, and something is wrong. So we finally end up in the hotel, and I go to the bathroom, and the pain just does not stop, and it gets worse and worse and worse. So I go back to my room, I lay down on the bed, and I just don't know what to do. I was like, God, I didn't have any, Advil or any painkillers with me, but moreover, I was just worried that this was a pain that I had not experienced before, and it just got worse and worse. So I called the other guys. I was like, I don't know what's going on. Perhaps I should go to the doctor. But then again, we were in a different country, in a city that we didn't know. We didn't have any phone numbers. And then I was like, I got to go back to the bathroom because I felt that I was getting nauseous. And the pain was so bad that I could barely walk. And so I made it to the bathroom, and I threw up. That's how much pain I had. And then the other friends went to the hotel lobby, and so they asked for help, and they called for information. And it turned out there was a hospital not far from where we stayed. And so the emergency desk asked us if we needed an ambulance, but we were there by car, and the hospital was not far away. So we told them we'll get there by car. So they brought me to the emergency, the first help department, and immediately I had to go through all this red tape. So I needed to, because we were foreigners, and so they didn't have any record of me, and so we had to show them my passport. I had to tell them where I live, the name of my physician, which I didn't know because I hardly ever was sick. And so finally we got all this, which was very, very painful, because I was like, I need help. Can I do this later? And so finally they have enough information. They bring me to an observation room. There's a doctor that comes in, and he's like, okay, I'm going to put you on painkillers, and then we'll examine you further. And so they put me on painkillers. pretty strong painkillers. All of a sudden I'm lying in this hospital bed, and my friends are there. Is like, okay, so what now? And then the doctor is like, I think I have a hunch what this could be. I'm thinking kidney stones. And I was like, what? Kidney stones? I don't even know how that works. How do you get kidney stones? But he's like, well, we can only know for sure tomorrow when we do an echo, or we will scan what's going on, and then we can tell if this is truly kidney stones. But from the looks of it, that's what it is. But we're going to keep you here in the emergency room. We'll put you on some painkillers. Here's a button that you can push when the painkillers subside, and you can ask for more. And so my friends go back home to the hotel, and I'm there in a strange country, and I'm like there for the first time in my life in a hospital at night. And so after a couple of hours, indeed, the painkillers wear off and the pain comes back. And around me, I just hear these machines. Like some people wear, on these heart monitors, and so you've got the little bleeps, and I call the nurse. I was like, I'm in pain, and the nurse does not understand me because I'm from Holland and she's from Belgium, and from the Flanders part of Belgium, and so apparently she has a pretty strong dialect. So she doesn't really understand me. I could not understand her. But anyway, she goes back to get a doctor, and so they give me some more medicine, and finally I get to sleep a little bit. The next day, they put me through a scanner, and and the first time it's a disaster because they want to do this full scan, and so with this contrast fluid, which apparently I am allergic to, which I did not know. So all of a sudden I'm starting to feel dizzy. I was like, I think I'm going to pass out. I don't know what's going on. It felt as if they had injected some kind of like kryptonite. And all of a sudden, like, I'm feeling even worse than I felt. So when I get back to my room, I have to wait a couple of hours, and then they are like, okay, we're going to try something else. And they bring me back to the scanner, et cetera, et cetera. And then finally, after a full day, they show me the X-ray photos. And yes, it turns out I have big kidney stones in my left kidney, and they're too big to get out of the kidney by themselves. And so they tell me, well, we're gonna let you stay here in the hospital, and we're gonna give you the treatment right here. We've called your physician and your insurance company, and they are okay because they told us that if you go back to the Netherlands, you will only be able to get treatment in a couple of weeks from now, because apparently in the Netherlands they don't have that many machines that can pulverize these kidney stones. So they tell me, well, you know what? We're going to give you a treatment here. We have machines here in this hospital, permanent machines, and the Netherlands are traveling around because we think this is serious enough to treat immediately. We don't want to take any risk. It's the first time you have these kidney stones. And so there I am in the hospital. And so my friends, they pay me a last visit before they go back to the Netherlands because they have their parishes. And I'm there in this room with another guy who also speaks this dialect that I can barely understand. And I have nothing to do but to stare at the ceiling and wait for this shock treatment, which literally is shock treatment. They put you on a bed, which happened, I think, a day later or 2 days later. And they send these shock waves, these audio waves through your body, and then that, if they do that long enough, so it sounds like as if someone is like it's these big like clicks that you hear, and every time you hear the sound, it feels as if someone like Thor is standing there with his hammer, like beating you on your sensitive kidney, location. And so it was very, very painful. But finally, I get back to my bed. I'm so bruised and battered that I can't even go to the toilet myself. So you have to call the nurse, and it's all stuff that I've never had before, and I feel totally miserable. And then finally, after a couple of days, they need to I need to go through the scan again because they need to make sure that the stones are out. And fortunately, they managed to pulverize it in one take, and I could go back home. Wow. And then they tell me, you'd better drink a lot in the future for these stones not to return, which I did. But unfortunately, a year later, I've got some new kidney stones, and then they are recurring every several years. When I started running marathons, I started training. For some reason, these kidney stones did not return, and I think it was linked to two beneficial aspects of running, which is first one, motion. When you're running, you're constantly moving, and so the stones they don't settle in your kidneys. Even if there's a tiny little stone there, because of the shocks of the running, it gets expelled, and you don't even notice it. The second aspect of running is because I was running these long distances, I was constantly drinking, and the more fluids you drink, the easier the stones get expelled. And so, flash forward many years, 20 years later, just the other week, I wake up in the morning, very early in the morning, with this feeling that I know so well. And I look at the clock, it's 5:30. And I know immediately why I'm awake. It's another kidney stone attack. And I had been to the hospital, I think about a year and a half ago, because there was a kidney stone in my right kidney, which I was able to pass without that many problems. And they were also scanning the left kidney, and they told me there are two other stones in your left kidney, but they're very small. So, well, you may just pass them. Just continue to drink, to do whatever you did in the past, and whenever there's a problem, go see your physician. The only thing with kidney stones is if you get a fever or if there's blood in your urine, then you have to go to the emergency room, because then it could be stuck in a place where it's not supposed to be, and that can be very dangerous. Can actually shut down your kidney. But that's what they've told me for many years in the past, and so I wasn't too worried. But once I get this kidney stone attack, I'm thinking, okay, this is probably due to the fact that I'm not running anymore. That's the only difference from previous years. Instead of running, I've been doing lots of walking, because of course I'm preparing for the Camino. But walking is not the same as running, and it does not put the same stress on your body, and you don't. There are not these shocks that may get rid of those kidney stones. And so, first attack, I went to the doctor, and he said, we'll just observe this. There is still time before you go to Spain, so when you have to call 911, or in our country it's 112. Whenever there's a fever, make sure you get to the hospital as quick as you can. Thank you for telling us. At least we'll be standing by. And so 2 days ago, what was it, 3 days ago, I get another kidney stone attack, and still no stones. So I'll be going to the doctor this Wednesday, and we will have to come up with a plan of action and see if I need to get a scan. I definitely want to have a scan, because it is possible that these stones are too big and my kidney cannot get rid of them. And so then they will have to get pulverized. But the situation in the Netherlands has not changed that much. So I'll still probably have to wait several weeks before I can get that treatment. And I do know one thing for sure, and that is that I want to get these stones out of my system before I go to Spain. Imagine this happening when you're in the middle of nowhere. And, Spain can get very hot. So, yeah, I'd rather be in the neighborhood of a hospital whenever this happens. Not to mention that if a stone gets stuck and you get this emergency situation, again, it could be very dangerous when you're walking in the middle of nowhere. So I'll know more this next Wednesday, but for now, I'll keep a close eye on this, and I can I tell myself this is a good thing for Lent. Lent is about valuing this the sense of suffering and offering it up, and okay, I got my work cut up for me. So my little stone for this time of Lent. That's what I wanted to share with you, and this is what happened this week. It is time for our movies and TV segment, and as I mentioned in the opening of the show, I just came back from watching Logan, which made quite a splash at the box office, which hasn't been the case for all the X-Men movies, so Sony must be very happy that this happened, because, well, they've been losing a lot of money on their movies lately. But this seems to be quite a hit. It's also the final movie of two great actors that have portrayed Professor Xavier and Logan slash Wolverine. That's quite appropriate to use the word slash in the franchise. Both actors have announced that this will be their last movie, at least the last X-Men movie. And so it's kind of like a farewell party. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to see it, because I have great admiration for what they've done throughout the years. I still remember seeing the first X-Men movie. It was a franchise that I was not familiar with. I remember seeing the posters in the train station and thinking, this looks cool. This is not Superman. This was way before the whole Marvel thing exploded. And so superhero movies were still relatively rare. And I loved the concept of these mutants having these powers. And this was one of the first franchises that I saw that had a team of people working together. So it was not just about one superhero, but it was about a whole bunch of them, which lent itself to a lot of interaction and great dialogue. And it was just different than anything we'd seen before. And over the years, the X-Men movies were kind of, some were good, some were really bad, others were in between. I've never become a true fan of the series. The first movie was, I think, my favorite movie, and it's probably just linked to the fact that it was new at the time. And over time, I kind of got tired of the whole thing. And especially the Logan, the Wolverine movies were almost a spin-off, and some were really not that good. But this final one got great reviews. It also came with a warning. This was an R-rated movie. And so the violence was going to be much more graphic than we had seen in any other X-Men movie before. So I was forewarned. I was also told that there was some language, but usually I don't mind that too much. But the gore, the blood, the slashing, that's something that I know that I'm not a fan of. There's a very good reason that I barely ever watch horror movies, because I just can't stomach it. So this morning, kind of forewarned, I went to the movies, but it's Lent. So what do you know? I had not had lunch yet. So I'm sitting there in the movie theater, and it starts right away with a lot of limbs flying around, and they don't hold back at all on the violence. In the previous movies, there was a lot of slashing and a lot of blood as well, but it was less visible. But this time they go like, it's literally in your face. I was so glad that this was not a 3D movie, because I don't know what there's just so much flying around. I think in 3D it would have been too much for me. That's also, I think, one of the problems that I have with the movie. It's just too much. It's over the top. I know it's R-rated, but I wonder if there would have been another way to tell this story without all the gore, because it's just gore. It's just, this reminded me of the last Rambo movie that they made. Now, Rambo 2 had always had a lot of blood and a lot of violence, but it was much more muted than in the last movie that when Sylvester Stallone came back. I think it was in the same year that he did that Rocky movie, which I actually enjoyed quite a bit, his return as Rocky. But with Rambo, it was so over the top, and it was so gratuitous. There was so much shooting, and the blood was CGI blood, so it kind of looked fake, and it was like, come on, stop it. Okay, I've had enough. I know that there is violence, but you don't have to show it to me to tell a good story. And I kind of had the same feeling here. I know that Logan is one of the most violent characters of the X-Men franchise, and there is a lot of rage. But why does every second scene have to be this yelling, this grunting, and this slashing? And it's not just Logan; it's other characters as well. Just too much violence for me. But then again, I told you this is just not my thing in general. I just don't like all that violence. The world is violent enough. Then again, there are also things to appreciate in this movie. I think the story they told was a good farewell story. We've seen so many Genesis stories of these superheroes, so many uh, um, stories that tell you how the superhero got started. And with the reboots, think of Spider-Man, you see these Genesis stories told over and over again, and you kind of want to see something different. Well, this is a much rarer genre where we say goodbye to superheroes, and it's their swan song in a certain way. And I think they made some courageous choices here, especially in the depiction of Professor Xavier, who's no longer a professor. He's much, much older. This movie takes place, I think, in 2024. And so it's the kind of the near future. And both Xavier as well as Logan are old, and they're kind of literally at the end of their lives in a certain way. And I thought the acting was good. Acting was really good, especially of the two main characters. There are some children in this movie. They do some pretty decent acting as well. Um, the story is gritty. That's and all too familiar. If you follow the story of the X-Men over the years, you know that it's ultimately a metaphor of our societies in which we lose our patience with each other, and we're not tolerant anymore towards people that are different. The whole mutant thing, of course, is kind of a movie metaphor of racism and xenophobia in our societies. And I don't tell you anything new, that is currently all the rage in many of our Western worlds, and our countries are taking a turn in the wrong direction, I think, and that there's very little tolerance anymore, let alone understanding and mutual support, and especially for people that are not just different but also weaker. Our societies are getting so hardened. And this movie makes a stand. The whole story, the whole backstory, the whole mythology of the X-Men is about, you know, showing us a mirror. This is what can happen if you don't have any respect anymore for your fellow human beings, even though they are different. They're still your brothers and sisters. But the movie franchise did this sometimes in a bit moralizing way. In this movie, they do it in a almost too eerily, realistic way. This is like an extrapolation of the tendencies that we see in politics in our Western countries nowadays. But it takes place in a superhero movies where the mutants strike back. um, the, the only gripe that I have with that plot is that it is the same theme that we've seen over and over again in the X-Men movie. So the story doesn't tell us anything new. Doesn't do anything that differently with the bad guys. So that is a bit monochromatic in a way. It's like, yeah, you've got the government, the army that wants to exploit these mutants and use them as weapons. Well, we've seen that in a lot of X-Men related movies by now, and so there's not much happening there. And it feels like a trope almost, like it's the same story all over again. But what makes this story, I think, more unique and interesting is that this is not that much about that back plot, because we know what's going to happen and we know the situation, and it's not going to change. But what happens here is more about the characters and how they evolve, and how does this, goodbye takes place, and kind of passing it on to a new generation. I think they did that pretty well, pretty well. Although, again, too much violence for my taste. And so there were a few moments in there that were touching, but it didn't make up for all the violence. It didn't justify the violence. It didn't make it more acceptable to me. So it almost kind of, I would have applauded this movie more had it been more restrained when it comes to the violence, and even more focused on the character development. But for the superhero genre, this is definitely something new that they try to do, and here's hoping that this will uh, uh, be something, especially the kind of the type of story arc, more character driven, less superhero driven in a way. I hope that is something that will help mature the genre. I don't expect this to see this anytime soon in the Marvel universe, because they seem to have their perfect mix of humor and character development and action. Um, I don't know if we're going to see this in the DC world, because they seem to have such a problem with finding the right balance for the DC stories. But this may be something that Sony could excel at. I don't know. This is kind of a Marvel branch that is a bit separate from all the other superheroes. It's almost like a third party in this thing. So perhaps, I don't know. Then again, I don't know. This may be a one-time thing with the X-Men, and I don't think that they can resist rebooting the whole thing and showing us a new generation of X-Men, and just going through the motions. Especially because you need some very good actors to pull this off, a movie like this. And well, those are rare to find as well. So those were my thoughts about the latest X-Men movies. Logan. It's a movie not for everyone. So not really for me. I've seen it once. For me, that's enough. For me, that's absolutely enough. But not bad. Not bad at all. I just expected it to be a little bit better. But then again, perhaps my hopes were a bit too high. Anyway, it's time for a short break, and then we will move over to our next segment, which will be about Lent and about cookies. Well, that's a good combination. But let's take a short break. Now, take advantage of this short break to thank all our sponsors, especially those of you that have supported our winter giving campaign. We still have 2 more weeks of winter, and in some parts of the world, it is really cold. And so we still have a little bit of time left for our giving campaign. We're almost getting to the 50% mark of our projected goal for this year. So in total, this year, we somehow need to raise 50,000, and we're almost at half that. So for those of you that haven't given yet, this is the right time to do that. Help us reach $25,000 for this, this first start of the year. In that way, you will help us to continue this work and to bring you these shows for the rest of the year. And I also want to thank all of you that have already donated. Even the small donations are just a sign that you care and that you're part of what we're trying to do. And that's what's most important to us. So if you want to support us, go over to tridio.com/giving or go to sqpn.com and look for information there. Thank you so much for your support. And welcome back to The Break. I'm Father Roderick, your host, and it is time for a short visit to the Peculiar Bunch. Here at the Peculiar Bunch, we're always happy to tell you everything you always wanted to know about Catholics, but you were afraid to ask. And there is no time more fitting for this quote about light bulbs than the time of Lent, because it's all about what we eat on Fridays and beyond. Who doesn't like cookies? And especially, is there any child that does not like cookies? Some children may be, wheat intolerant or milk intolerant, but then parents try to do whatever they can to give them cookies that they can tolerate, because there should not be a childhood without cookies. And my childhood was the same. We loved cookies, and especially Dutch cookies, because everybody knows the Dutch have the best cookies in the world. They're awesome. The cookies and the Dutch cookies are super cookies. You know what my favorite type of cookie was, and still is? We call them Spritzes, or German Spritzkuchen, because they originally come from Germany, but they date back to a time when, Germany, Holland, it was kind of, Germany was our backyard. It's kind of the frontiers were not as close, as separate as nowadays. But anyway, so comes from the German Spritzkuchen. And the recipe for spritzes, that's how we called them in the Netherlands, date back to the 16th century. Can you imagine that? So one of our best cookies that we still eat dates back to the 16th century. So if you live in the United States, the buildings don't even date back to that era. So we have cookies that date back to that era. Now, these cookies are made with real butter, and the best ones are half dipped in chocolate. And they're actually, the recipe is pretty easy to make. And there are regions in the United States where they make these Spritz cookies for I think around the time of Christmas. But then I looked up some American recipes, and for some reason they always add way too many ingredients. They put like all sorts of artificial flavor and coloring, and these weird shapes. And the real Spritzes are kind of thick, and they're very basic. So the ingredients are butter, flour, vanilla sugar, and egg whites. And you mix that together, perhaps some I don't, there may be a few more. I think that's actually it. But then the spritzes, you put them in, how'd you call those things? It's like what you use also, this bag that you can use for whipped cream to make these nice shapes. And basically, instead of making the whipped cream shapes, you do that with the cookie dough, and then you create all these spritz cookies. You put them in the oven, and they come out golden brown, and they're thick and nice and buttery, and oh my gosh, they're so awesome. And so we had this one cookie jar at home, this blue round cookie jar, which was plastic, which we loved, because we had another cookie jar which was made with a real tin. But it was very difficult to open it. It was kind of stuck a little bit. It was very old. I think it was from my grandparents. And so the cookies that were in that cookie jar, as children, we could not access them because, well, we couldn't get the lid off. That's how stuck it was. That's why we all loved the blue cookie jar, because the blue cookie jar was very easy to open. There was one other problem with the cookies, and that was that blue cookie jar was in the second drawer of the dresser that was in our main room. And so we sometimes went off wondering, at times when our parents were elsewhere in the house, and so we tried to open that second drawer, and the second drawer was stuck as well. So we developed over time all these techniques to open the drawer without making any sound, which was really tough. So you had to kind of like pull, and then the moment you felt that the drawer was giving way, you had to slow down, because otherwise it would squeak, and my mother would hear that, and she'd come in the room and tell us not to touch the cookies. But we over time we had perfected our technique. I think I was the oldest one, so I was always the one who had to like open the drawer, and then we couldn't touch the tin cookie jar, so we opened the blue one, and the spritzes were always in the blue ones. And every once in a while, especially around the time that we would have family visits, we would get the spritzes half dipped in chocolate, and those were divine. A little bit more tricky in terms of getting rid of the evidence, because not only did you have to be very careful with the crumbs, but also with the chocolate, because it would get under your nails. And so we would make sure that we got rid of any trace of the chocolate, any crumbs. And that blue jar there were always cookies there, because, well, in Holland, it's very important to this hospitality always translates first to the cookies. You cannot receive people without offering them cookies. And so there was only one exception. There was one time during the year that blue circular cookie jar was devoid of spritzes, and that was during Lent. Before Lent, the week before Lent, Carnival, my mom would transfer all the cookies that were still in the blue jar. She would put them in the tin jar, in the tin can, which we couldn't open, at least not without making a lot of noise. And then that blue cookie jar was transformed into our Lenten jar. And my parents told us that during the entire time of Lent, whenever we would receive sweets, or someone would offer us a cookie or whatever, we had to bring it to that plastic blue jar, put it in, and then at Easter, we were allowed to open that cookie jar. I know that in other families, they could open that jar every Sunday. Not in the Van Heugen household. That jar would be a jar that would be like a safe for 40 days. And there was an additional problem with that. My grandparents lived in the south of the country. And in the south of the country, it's mostly predominantly Catholic. And so they had this huge tradition of celebrating Carnival in the weekend and in the days leading up to Ash Wednesday. And as children, we loved to go and stay with our grandparents. It was usually also a week off that we didn't have to go to school. And we would go and watch these huge parades. Now, in New York, in Manhattan, they've got the big Thanksgiving parade. This is very, very different. This is not with balloons. This is with these big kind of cars it's just gigantic ornamentation. Everybody's dressed up. The best thing of the Southern Carnival was that the princes of Carnival were throwing out candy. And so we would stand there we had these bags with us, and we would gather the candy, and it was all over the place. They would just throw it from the big cars and into the what's the word again? It's not cars, but the floats. And we would gather pounds and pounds of candy. We would get back home on Tuesday evening. Our parents would pick us up, and of course we'd already sampled the candy, but it was so much that of course we still had huge reserves. And we come back home late at night on Tuesday evening, and my mom would get the blue cookie jar, open it, and in the cookie jar goes all our loot. All our Carnival loot goes in there, and we're not able to touch it for 40 days. And I have to say that despite the fact that every once in a while we would go and get some of those spritzes without perhaps being entirely legally um, allowed to do that. Well, there was not a true, black on white contract with us that we couldn't do that, but we knew that with Lent it was different. We did not dare raid the second drawer uh, of the dresser during Lent, because Lent, that was not just human convention, that was divine law. That was what God asked you to do, and we were good Catholic kids. So at least as far as I know, I've never raided that blue cookie jar during the time of Lent. And so 40 days later at Easter, we would, go to church, of course, and then we'd go rush to that second drawer and open the blue cookie jar, and there would be our immense, there's like 2 pounds of candy plus the additional candy. We didn't get that much candy because in school, we were a Catholic school, so we didn't get that many candy from other friends as well. So, but that we would sample, and I still remember that for 40 days, that was kind of like the tabernacle in our home, it's like that second drawer. We knew, oh, the cookies are there, the sweets are there, the candy is there. And then after sampling 2 or 3 sweets, I was over it. I was like, was that what I worship for 40 days? Okay, well, that's fine. I don't really care about it. And we just go about our business. So it was a really good educational time for me, at least, to discover that there is more to life than just candy and cookies and sweets. And I never really had a sweet tooth since that time. And I wonder if it is linked to that, the time of Lent. So yeah, I don't know. My brother and sister both have much more of a sweet tooth than I have, and I guess it's why I still don't really mind saying no to when people offer me cookies or whatever. One exception, of course, the spritzes. If anyone offers me Spritzkuchen, spritzes, I cannot resist. I cannot say no, but it's probably because it's not just the cookies that I like, but it's the memory of the cookies. It's what they symbolize. It's like that happy time during the day and sometimes during the night when you would sample one of those spritzes. Anyway, those are my memories of Lent and how we try to give that a practical incarnation during those 40 days. Nowadays, of course, I can get any cookie. I can buy tons of spritzes and sweets, but I don't have a sweet tooth, so I almost never have cookies in the house. They have some cookies down the stairs for the parish, and even then, I don't miss them if there are no cookies. I don't care for them that much. Sometimes we'll take one, but it's not like, oh my gosh, I gotta have one more. But so I have to try to find other ways to honor Lent. And this year, I'm trying something else. I'm like every year, I'm trying to find something that I haven't done before. So I've done vegetarian for a year. I've gone vegan. I've tried to give away something every day. And this is not to boast, of course, but just to share you what I'm trying to do this year, which is kind of new. And I explained this also in the last episode of The Walk, which is my other podcast that you can find over at tridio.com. This year, inspired by my good friend Jimmy Akin, I'm trying intermittent fasting, which is actually very simple. It means you eat 1 meal per day, and for me, preferably in the evening. So I don't eat breakfast. I don't eat lunch, and the thing is, it's turning out to be much easier than anything I've done before. The only thing that you need to break, or at least in my case, is I got to break my habits. So I always have the habit to, when I wake up, get a cup of coffee. I still get my coffee, black coffee. That's not a problem. I drink tea a lot during the day. But I sit down at my breakfast table and I read the news and I listen to the radio. So that was the only thing that I had to change in terms of habit. But in terms of, reducing my food intake to one meal per day, it's not really a problem. And the advantage is also that I don't have to, really watch what I eat in the evening because, well, on the total amount of calories is going to be less anyway than what I would eat normally. So it is. It's an interesting experiment. I am quite careful not to overdo this. So I do have to drink a lot, especially with the kidney stone problem. So I do drink loads and loads. And also on days that I have to work, like last week, we went to film in the north of the country for an entire day. I knew that I had to be on my feet for most of the day. That's where of course, I have breakfast and I have lunch and I have dinner because you just need your energy. I can't afford to faint in the middle of an interview. But on other days when I'm just doing like light work, not a problem. So that's what I'm doing for Lent. Of course, some other stuff as well. And I'd like to hear your suggestions and your ideas. And if you care to share that with me, well, you know where to find me. Just go to the internet and follow me on Facebook or on Twitter. And if you have any suggestions or ideas, or I know that some of you are now thinking, well, that's not healthy. And let me give you some advice. And don't worry, I know what I'm doing. And, if I need more energy and I need to eat something, I will. It's not like an unbreakable bond or anything, but it's something that I'd like to try out. And I have to say, there's one thing that I've noticed immediately is that I'm much sharper during the day. So I've only seen benefits so far. You're listening to The Break. I'm Father Roderick. Time for a little break. Hey, I just want to mention once more that one of the reasons that we're asking for your support during our winter giving campaign is that you enable us to do new things as well. In addition to the podcast that we produce, we've also been experimenting with video on social media. And you may have noticed that we had quite a big success with our latest Lenten movie, our Lego movie animation. It's Lent explained in 60 seconds. Posted that this year on Facebook, and it's blowing all the records that we've set before. It's unbelievable. That one post has reached more than 1 million people. The video alone so far has been viewed 325,000 times, and it has been shared more than 7,000 times. That is just one of the reasons that we need your support, because we know that this works. We've seen this working time and again, and every time we do a new animation, we post a new viral video like that, it gets bigger because the people that have seen that before, I guess the algorithm of Facebook helps them to find our content more often, and so we've seen an uptick in the views on everything that we do. But we couldn't create these videos without your support. So once more, thank you for doing so. Thank you for supporting us. And with that, I think it is time to move over to the world of tech. And I should have a nice jingle for that. Where do I have it? Should be somewhere here. Oh, there it is. There is one more thing. I always get nostalgic when I hear the voice of Steve Jobs. I kind of miss him. I miss the excitement that his keynote speeches gave us. And there was almost every time, well, there were a few exceptions, but many times when Steve Jobs entered the stage, you would think, so what's going to be the next step in technology? What else is Apple going to make? And we've kind of lost that for the past few years. And now all these other companies have kind of caught up with Apple, and there are some great phones out there. And just recently there was this big technology. What was it? I don't even know what it is. I kind of forget the things, but a lot of the new phones were shown to the public, and it's just unbelievable the how slick some of these look and how good the technology is nowadays. It's just very hard to stand out anymore. That's why, of course, a lot of these companies are looking for other venues to sell us stuff. And one of those venues is of course the venue of mixed reality or virtual reality. Just a week ago, we got numbers, the first time ever that we got numbers about the PSVR. So that's the PlayStation virtual reality headset that they've been selling for a couple of months now. And it turns out that it's a much bigger success than even they themselves anticipated. They had set the target of selling about 4 million, about 1 million of those by the end of April. It turns out they've already sold that amount earlier in the year, and they will probably top that. And Microsoft has also said that mixed reality is going to be a very important technology for them. They want to connect with both Windows machines and also the Xbox One, which is their gaming console. And as you know, with HoloLens, Microsoft is going in a different direction from Apple and Valve and Oculus, because they are doing these translucent glasses. And I've seen some prototypes which are really awesome. And one of the cool things is that they've now developed these glasses that you can just flip up. So you flip them down, and then you're seeing the world around you enhanced by these projections, these 3D projections, and then you can just easily step out of it, which is something you can't do yet with the PSVR. That's something you have to put on your head, and it takes some time to adjust. And once you're inside that world, it's a bit of a hassle to step out of it again, which makes, of course, the immersion factor very high. It's literally you're in a different world, but it also makes it harder to switch back and forth. Now, a while ago, I went to get new glasses. I still had the glasses that I bought when I was in seminary. They were hopelessly outdated, but I didn't wear them that much anyway. And I knew that over time, my eyes, of course, change. I get older, so I have more trouble reading fine print, and I had the sense that my farsightedness was improving. So my vision got better when it comes to seeing in the distance. And so I went to the optometrist and got myself two new pairs of glasses. One for on the road, that's usually when I wear glasses, and one set for reading. And the reading was not really that necessary, but it's kind of nice if you're like reading for an extensive time. For instance, I read a lot on the Kindle. And I'm actually also still reading like paper books from time. I just started reading a science fiction book, The Asgard Run, which is still awesome. So for Lent, one of the things that I try to not do is to use technology before I go to bed. So instead, I'm reading a paper book, and I don't have that many novels anymore. I gave most of them away. One science fiction novel that I kept, it's called The Asgard Run. It's about this big spaceship that they discover, and it's taking place in the near future. And a group of people, a group of tourists, because that thing has been open to, they are only able to penetrate like one room, a tiny room. The rest of the ship is immense. It's like, I don't know how many soccer fields long. But they are unable to penetrate it. The ship has been there for thousands of years. and then they've created this whole theme park around it, and people visit in small groups. The door is half open, and then all of a sudden the ship gets activated, and a group of tourists get stuck in there and have to somehow make it through the ship to the exit. It's an awesome, awesome novel. So I'm reading that. But anyway, it's tiny print. It's a paperback. And so having reading glasses really helps. Makes for much more relaxed reading. But what I did not expect is that these new glasses also are improving the virtual reality quality tremendously, because now all of a sudden the PSVR is no longer blurry and everything is so sharp and so even more real. I was super excited. So invigorated by these new glasses, I tried out some new demos, some new PSVR demos, and I am again totally in love with this technology. It's not perfect yet, and they're still like in the edge of my vision. The lenses are deformed, and you get all sorts of aberrations. And I guess that every face is kind of different, and the glasses, the VR goggles, try to kind of find the middle of the road, what works more or less for everyone. But I would love to be able to tweak, like for instance, the distance between the lenses, because I feel that they're not entirely in front of my eyes. But you can't do that with this prototype. Hopefully or it's not a prototype anymore, but it's the first generation. So hopefully in the future it will be easier, much easier to get the exact, like when you go to the optometrist, they take like I don't know, like I was there for almost 2 hours, and they did so much to make sure that the glasses that they were finally produced were exactly right for my set of eyes. Well, obviously they can't do that with mass production with these things. So, but if for glasses it's necessary to get a good, like 100% clear vision, to take the time to make it fit, then of course for PSVR, for virtual reality or mixed reality, that's even more important. But we're not there yet. Anyhow, I love the kind of the first thing, the first proofs of concept. And it's interesting to see that the industry is trying to figure out what works in virtual reality. And sometimes it's very different from what I always thought. I thought that first-person games would be all the rage. That you could sit and fly your X-Wing fighter. Of course, that's amazing. But you know what works much better? It's like these, or even better, I should say, is these virtual reality stories. These almost kind of adventure type stories, or one game that is totally convincing in VR is a God game. Do you know those games? Remember the black and white game? If you're old like me, you remember that game. It was a bit like the Settlers, and you had to manage heaven and hell. You had to kind of put people to work, and you could, give them a god or whatever, or a demon. So I just played the demo of Tethered, which is kind of a cross between black and white and the Settlers. So Tethered, you're looking down on a floating rock, and there is this egg that falls from the sky, and it's hatching, and out comes this little fellow, and you can put it to work. You can teach him how to become a miner, for instance, or a woodworker, and then with your eyes, you're pointing at where you want to send this guy. So that's basically, you see like this blue umbilical cord that you can attach to certain tasks, and that's why it's called Tethered, because you're tethering the inhabitants of your little world to the places where they have to work for you. And then of course there are some enemies as well. Sometimes you have these eggs that are not blue but brown, and there are these monsters that spring up, so you have to create your soldiers. So it also is a bit like Civilization, although it doesn't have that conquering aspect to it. And it works so well, and you truly feel like a parent looking down on your pets, and you're like, okay, let's you do that, and then, oh, wait a minute, I need you to fight that, and it's getting more and more complicated. Even the demo itself is already riveting, because after, I don't know, half an hour, it gets really intense. The full game is actually mid-price, so it's not that expensive. It's like, I don't know, 25 euros, I think, or $25. It's reasonable. It's not super cheap, but it's reasonable. And you have a lot of these worlds, and every level is trying to make it to the end of to make sure that everybody survives until the end of the level or something like that. It works really well. So that's Tethered. And I also tried another game. Which one was it? Oh, that was also a genre that I've never seen before. The game is called Bound, and it's almost a tech demo. So you enter this very abstract world. I'd seen screenshots and I didn't really care for it. But once you see it in virtual reality and you get a sense of scale, it changes everything. And it's about this woman that is like a ballet dancer, and she is sent to save her world, which is slowly disintegrating. And there's this big monster, which is truly like King Kong size. It's this huge threat, and you can't really see it. So they play with that. There's music in it. It's like really surreal. It's very hard to convey how it plays, but there is a demo of the game, so you can try it out if you have a PSVR. It's Bound, and again, it's more art than it is a game. It's very well executed, and this is just the beginning. Imagine what we can do a couple of years from now. I'm wondering if and when Apple is going to enter this market, if this is something that they're going to explore or not. It could be something where they could try and even, I don't know, be innovative again. Do something that both Microsoft and Sony are not doing. Or open it up. The problem with the PSVR is that every time you buy a virtual reality game or demo, or, well, not a demo, demos are free, but a game or an application, it's pretty expensive. And it's hard for new players to enter the market. Microsoft is going to open that up a little bit more, but I think that Apple, with the App Store, has already such an army of developers. It's such a powerful platform. Imagine if all of a sudden you've got thousands of people competing with each other to make the most popular VR apps. Imagine what that would mean for the innovation in the industry. I, for one, cannot wait for Apple to integrate this in their lineup of products. I think not because it's Apple, but because Apple has such amazing developers. The community of developers is unparalleled. It's the biggest one in the world and the best one in terms of quality. I want them to put their, because let's be honest, the app world is kind of saturated. I use a couple of apps and that's it. But the majority of the apps that I ever downloaded, I never open them anymore. And I'm kind of reluctant to buy new apps. So even from a economic point of view, it would make sense to create a new market. And why not reinvigorate that developer community that Apple already has built over the years? They've got great software. The only thing lacking is a device that will unleash their power in a new, literally in a new dimension. That was what I would do if I were in charge of Apple, which is not the case, and that's probably a good thing for Apple. Hey, that brings us to the end of this episode of The Break. I hope you enjoyed the episode. And of course, I want to refer you to our website, trideo.com, TRIDEO.com, which is, of course, made by SQPN, the StarQuest Production Network, over at sqpn.com. That's also the place where you will find many more of our shows. And if you want to follow us on Facebook and on Twitter, just type it in the search window, and on YouTube. Let's not forget that. And if you haven't seen the Lego creations yet, the Lego videos, just Google that as well. And I hope you will enjoy that. There's one last thing that I want to mention to you. SQPN, Starquest Production Network, Trideo, that's much more than just a media platform. We are a community of friends, and some of us have known each other for years and years. And every once in a while, we want to organize an opportunity for us to get together in real life, not in VR, not on social media, but in real life. And this year, that's going to happen in the most beautiful city of the world, Rome. I'll be there to guide you, to take you to the places where it all began for me. And I've been going to Rome several times every year of my life as a priest. And so if you want to go tag along with me, make sure to check out our pilgrimage. It's going to take place in September. It's going to be organized by Mountain Butorek, who is a pro when it comes to pilgrimages in Italy. And not only will we visit the beautiful city of Rome, but also Assisi, which is another one of my favorite places in Italy. There's going to be good food, lots of culture, and of course, lots and lots of community. So check out the information on sqpn.com or on trideo.com. And if you're interested and able, I'd love to see you on that trip in September. That's all for today. Thanks for listening. Take care, and I will see you next time. And that's all, folks. Wow, an hour. That was long. Longer than I anticipated. That's it for today. I'm going to upload this thing, and thank you for stopping by in the chat. There was someone asking from Poland if I could record a reaction video. Unfortunately, I don't have the time. I've got way too much work on my hands as well. So if you could find some other people to do that. Again, thanks for stopping by. Have a great time, and I will notify you if I do some more streaming later this week. Take care now.